Hey guys, welcome back to the E&S Hoover Show. In this episode, we are going to be talking about should you invest in single family or should you invest in multifamily properties. I personally lean more single family than multifamily, and we're going to talk about why, but we're also going to talk about some of the benefits of multifamily in this video too. And if you like the content that we're bringing here, please subscribe to the channel. Also follow me on social media at E&S Hoover, and let's get started. As I discussed in the intro, I do lean more single family than multifamily. I would say it's probably like a 70-30 split in my portfolio. And the reason why I do that, well, there's multiple reasons why I do that. The first main reason that we're going to talk about is vacancy rate. On the multifamily side of investing, I typically see a turnover every 16 months with my units. This is on average over my portfolio. So that means, typically I'm getting around a year and a half of a lease out of each tenant that I have. When I talk about single families, it actually increases about 12 months on average. So I get about 28 months or almost a full 3 years of leases for that single family unit versus a multifamily unit. And there's multiple reasons for that. Okay. There's, the fact that people want to eventually rent a single family house or buy a single family house. So you have more people moving in that scenario. And then I also focus on areas with, good school districts, nice yards, places that people want to live and stay in. And a lot of my tenants, even though they probably could buy a house, for whatever reason, they decide they don't want to own a house. So they decide to rent a single family house, and they typically stay there a long time. I've had single family tenants stay as much as 6 years in one of my places, and I've never had that in a multifamily property of mine, not that I know of anyways. So that's the most important thing for me is vacancy rate. I like to keep tenants in my properties. That's why, even though the smart thing to do is to increase rent at the end of each tenant, at the end of each lease, I typically lean towards not increasing rent or doing a very small increase on rent, because the turnover cost is going to be way more than the increase in rent will make me. So if I have a good tenant, I'm probably going to do what the experts do against what the experts say, which is the experts are going to tell you to increase rents 5%, 10% every year. I'm going to lean the other way, especially if I know it's a good tenant and maybe I've been in the property or my contractor's been in the property and I know that they are taking good care of my home and they're a good quality tenant. They pay their rent on time and I don't have any issues with them. I'm going to lean towards a very small increase or no increase at all, because I want to keep my tenants in place. And that's why I do like single family rentals, because I do keep my tenants longer. So speaking about vacancy rates and keeping your tenants longer, you have to think about the cost that each vacancy is going to cost you. Okay, I will tell you right now that every time a tenant moves out, you will lose money. You're going to lose money no matter how quick that tenant leaves and how nice they leave that place. You're going to lose money, and it's sitting vacant for a little while until you find a new tenant. Because even if you do find a new tenant, more than likely that tenant's not going to be moving in very quickly. They're going to, the good tenants plan things, right? They're currently renting in another place. They need to give their landlord notice. They're going to have at least 30 days probably before they're going to move into your property. So you're going to have some vacancy time where you're paying utilities and mortgage payments and all that good stuff. And then on top of that, even if they do leave, your prior tenant does leave the place in good condition, you're probably still going to have to clean. It's probably a good thing to change the locks. There's a couple other things that you can do in between tenancy that's going to cost you money. And then, of course, if you are trying to be a passive investor, which most of us are, you're going to pay somebody to lease that unit for you as well. So not only are you losing money on market time, but you're also going to lose money on repairs and cleaning, and you're going to lose money when that property is vacant and goes to be rented if you are not leasing your own properties, which I do lease some of my own properties, the ones that are close to home. But for the other ones, I'm paying a property manager a full month's rent to get that property leased. Most real estate investors who like multifamilies over single families are going to talk about more doors under one roof and the benefits that can bring. And there are some benefits to that, and we're going to talk about that later in this video. But to me, the most important thing is there's less to go wrong on a single family property. So a lot of my single family investments, I'm buying them and I'm renovating them significantly. So I'm actually going to, have a new hot water tank, have new furnace and AC, have new kitchen appliances, have a newer roof more than likely. So there's a lot less to go wrong with that property once the tenant goes in there. On a multi-unit property, you got 2 furnaces, 2 hot water tanks, you got 2 refrigerators, 2 stoves. There's just a lot more that can go wrong and will go wrong in a multifamily property. And therefore, again, not that I won't buy a multifamily. I do. I just put one under contract the other day that I might talk about in an upcoming video. But I definitely lean single family. There's just a lot less headaches. And that's one of my big benefits, is that there's less to go wrong under each roof. Now, when it comes to roof expenses, yes, on a per door average, you are going to have a much higher roof expense when it's time to replace that roof versus having multiple doors under one roof. Number 3 is definitely more of a personal opinion for me, and that is I feel I get a better quality tenant on the single family side on average, rule of thumb, than I do on the multifamily side. Now, some people, and we'll talk about it when we get to multifamily, but some people have some different views on this. But again, a lot of my single family properties have nice yards, have multiple bedrooms, have multiple bathrooms. It's a comfortable home for a good family to live in, and therefore the families that are out there that don't want to buy a home or maybe just don't quite qualify to buy a home, they are going to look at renting one of my properties, and I get really good tenants, especially in specific school districts that I've had success with, and I stick with those in a lot of my investments. I really like to continue buying in very specific areas that I like and that I know the school district is good, and therefore I tend to get good tenants. Not all the time. I have been burned a few times for sure, and there is a video on my channel. I'll put a card to it right here so you can click on it, but just some tips to help you find good tenants if you're renting the properties yourself. I put a video together of some tips to look out for as you're renting to a new tenant. But I do feel that I get a slightly better quality tenant on a single family home in a good community with a nice yard than I get in a multi-family property. But there are some benefits to the type of tenants that you get in multi-family properties as well, which we're going to talk about here in a little bit. And probably most importantly to me is liquidity. Okay, liquidity is super important in any kind of an investment, and real estate is probably one of the least liquid types of investing that you can do. If you have a stock and you need to get your money out of a stock, you just click a button and then within a couple of days that money's probably going to be in your bank account. On the real estate side, you're going to have to, fill out a seller's disclosure, fill out some paperwork, put it on the market, have showings, get offers. I mean, you're looking a minimum 60 days, probably closer to 90 to 120 days from the time that you decide to sell that property to the time that you're actually cashing out. And it will be easier to liquid sell a property. So to liquidate a property, it will be easier to do that with a single family home in a good school district with a nice yard and multiple bathrooms than it will with a multifamily unit. Number one, because I can either get it vacant quicker or I can just wait till it's vacant a lot easier. Like, you're not going to have a vacant duplex or a vacant fourplex as easy as you're going to have a vacant single family. And number two, there's just more buyers looking for single family properties. Now, in our particular market of Pittsburgh, there's not a whole lot of inventory when it comes to multifamily properties. So it's starting to really get a lot closer to how easy it is to liquidate, but it's still a lot more of a hassle to liquidate a multifamily property than single family property. And I'd love to see somebody prove me wrong on that. So those are the reasons why I like to invest in single family properties. But right now, we're going to talk about some of the reasons why you should invest in multifamily properties. And we're going to start with the same topic on vacancy. When you have a vacant unit in a multi-unit property, well, guess what? More than likely, you're not going to be bringing zero income for that month because you have another unit that's bringing in income, right? So it's not as likely to have a completely vacant building as it is on a single family, because when you have a vacancy, it's just a completely vacant building. When on a multifamily, especially once you've had that multifamily for many years, you're going to have different leases at different times, and they're very rarely going to hit at the same time and be vacant at the same time. So that's one key benefit to a multifamily property, is when a unit does go vacant, you usually still have some income coming in to keep your investment rolling. One other huge benefit is the opposite of what we're told, right? We're told snitches get stitches, right? And I love the fact that in a multi-unit property, a lot of times my tenants are going to tattle on the other tenants if something's going on. For instance, if I have a single family property and the tenant decides to violate the lease and start smoking in the property, I'm not going to know probably until we either A, have a repair over there to handle and one of my contractors tells me, or B, once that property goes vacant and I walk into it to see what kind of repairs need done. And smoking can cause a lot of damage to a property, especially at tenant turnover time. And a lot of times their security deposit is not going to handle the amount of work that you have to do to get that property smelling good again. So a tenant is going to tell me if they smell smoke in the hallway or if they smell weed in the hallway. A tenant's going to tell me if there's trash piling up or if there's roaches or if there's any issues going on in a property. They're probably not going to think that, hey, I'm tattling on my neighbor. They're just thinking that, hey, there's a problem at the place I'm living at and I need to tell somebody. So tenants will tattle on each other, and that actually is a benefit to the building. Although it can also be a negative when tenants don't get along. It could cause your vacancy rate to go up because a tenant's not going to want to stay in a place where they're unhappy. So while it's a good thing, it can also be a bad thing at the same time. I've met a lot of landlords over the years that like to rent to single people. They like the fact that, hey, they're single, there's less water being used, there's less wear and tear on the flooring, there's less wear and tear on the appliances, and there's a lot of benefits to renting to single people. And if you like renting to single people, then you're probably going to want to play in the multifamily space. You're going to want to play in a space where you have like 1-bedroom units more than likely, because once you start getting into 2-bedroom units, you're going to get some young families, and you are not allowed to discriminate and not rent to people who have a family, right? So it's definitely something that if you want to rent to single people, if that's part of your business model, then you're definitely going to want to look at multifamily units that have 1-bedroom units, because that's really the only way that you can assure that you're going to get either a single person or you're going to get a couple in that scenario. Now, couples can be a little confusing, because what do couples do? Couples break up, right? And how does that get handled when it breaks up? And you want to make sure that you're planning for that when you sign the lease. Who's going to stay in that unit if you break up? If one particular tenant in the couple situation is higher on has a better job, higher income, been at the job longer, better credit, you may want to put that lease only into their name and tell them, if you two break up, this is your unit, not the other person's unit. But if you do like renting to people who are single and that's part of your business model, then you definitely are going to want to invest in multifamily, specifically 1-bedroom or studio multifamily properties. Probably the most important thing to the multifamily side of the business is people that are house hacking, people that want to live in one unit and rent out the other units to pay down their expenses or live completely expense free. And that is the biggest benefit to investing in multifamily property. So if that's part of your business model or how you're breaking into the real estate investment community, I highly recommend you look at multi-unit. So it's a little bit harder to rent out rooms in a house. You can still do it with friends, or you can do it with Airbnb, stuff like that, but it's a lot easier to rent out other units if it's a multifamily property versus a single family property. So if you are looking at, should I buy a single family or a multifamily, and you're going to be living in the unit, more than likely you're going to want a multifamily property if you're trying to make extra money off of that particular property, unless there's like a way that you can make a basement unit and Airbnb it, but you definitely are going to want to check your local codes and make sure that you're not breaking any laws when you do stuff like that. And here's the most important thing. Overall, if you're thinking about investing in real estate, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you're going to buy a single family or a multifamily property. The most important thing is just get in and buy a property. Don't buy something that doesn't make financial sense. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is you get in, you do your research, and you pull the trigger, because analysis paralysis is a real thing. I see people all the time. They say they're going to invest in real estate, and they overanalyze and they do so much research that their head's spinning, and then they never end up buying a piece of real estate. And the most powerful thing that I did for my family in my life is I started buying real estate when I was 19 years old. And I can tell you right now that those properties I bought early on have played a huge part of my financial lifestyle as I've grown into the future. So owning properties for many, many years, that's the most important thing, is to just buy a property. Even if it fully doesn't, let's say you miscalculated and it doesn't cash flow as well as you think it did, or it's not as great of a return on investment as you think it was. If you're in an appreciating market, which most of us are, eventually that investment is going to pay you dividends at some point during your ownership, and it's going to be super powerful for you long term. So the most important thing to this topic of multifamily versus single family is buy a property. Come up with what your criteria is. I'm going to buy a single family or I'm going to buy a multifamily, and just pull the trigger and buy it. Find a deal, go buy it, and don't overthink it, right? And just go do it. Take massive action. With that being said, thank you for tuning into this video. I hope you enjoyed the content. If you did, please like and subscribe to the podcast, to the YouTube channel. Hit me up on social media at ENS Hoover. I appreciate all the feedback and support, and I hope you guys enjoy the future content. I got a couple great interviews coming up and some more content we're making for you.